in 72. And in 72, the Charleston headquarters, where all the technical stuff was done, they made a design for the Bhopal plant. Now, interestingly, Union Carbide already had a plant running that was producing methyl isocyanate. But this was in state of West Virginia, in a small town called Institute. They still have it there. But when they made the design for the Bhopal plant, they made significant design differences. Yeah. Number one, in the Institute plant, all was stainless steel, high-grade stainless steel. The lines, the containers, the tanks, everything. Why? Because methyl isocyanate, or MIC, is a highly corrosive and erosive liquid. It erodes and corrodes. So they have to have stainless steel, high-grade stainless steel. In the Bhopal plant, they made material substitution. They said some places high-grade stainless steel, some places carbon steel. You could do that. Yeah. In the Institute plant, the tanks were no more than 10 tons capacity, so that even if there's leakage, it doesn't cause a lot of damage. Here, the tanks were 80 tons. In the Institute West Virginia, they were using chloroform as a coolant. Here, they were using brine, which is water, which is dangerous stuff. In the Institute plant, it was all automated. Safety was automated. So there was a pressure rise, temperature rise. Automatically, the systems would close down, pressure would come down, and take it. Here, it was all manual. So a worker had to run, check the gauge, run back to the control room, inform the supervisor, all of that stuff. Yeah. So there were many. I'm just making some of the most ones. But the part was the goal of all this design difference, making these differences, was to cut down costs. And they say that in the proposal. They said, we cut down 30% of the cost in investing. Now, as it happened, so it was set up in 1980, and as it happened, the same year, there was a global economy drive that was announced from the headquarters in Danbury, Connecticut, Union Carbide's headquarters. So as a part of the global drive, there were many cost cutting, and some of them really reckless. Among the most reckless I would count is the shutting down of the refrigeration unit, because Union Carbide's manual says that MIC is a highly reactive liquid. You have to ensure that it stays below zero, sub-zero temperature. And in 1982, 2 years before the disaster, the management shut down the refrigeration unit to save something like 650 rupees a day on electricity. Yeah. The other big thing that happened, again extremely reckless, was cutting down of number of workers. Workers' numbers were cut down by half. Drastic. Yeah. So earlier you had 6 people in the maintenance crew, but after the cost cutting, it was only 2. Earlier, fresh graduates were given 6 months of training, safety training. Each unit, you needed to be trained on, because you're dealing with hazardous stuff. We're dealing with not just MIC, we're dealing with phosgene, what's known as mustard gas used in the war. So all of that we're using. And you needed at least 6 months training to handle these dangerous stuff. But that had to be cut down to just 15 days. A fresh graduate gets 15 days training and sent to operate the factory in different units. So all this was happening, and these were resulting in accidents within the factory. Workers were dying, workers were being hospitalized, and I don't know of many places in the world where this happened, but this was one place in the world where workers in fact put up posters against the hazardous conditions in the factory and warned the neighborhood population. They said, get this factory closed. We will lose our job, but we don't mind, because this factory is going to kill you. But what the management did was get these guys kicked out. Whichever worker complained of occupational health and safety issues was kicked out on some pretext or other. So this continued, lot of accidents, deaths, And then there was a visit from the Union Carbide's headquarters, what's called a safety audit visit. So they did a safety audit and found 30 30 places where a major hazard could occur all over the factory. 11 of them were in the 7 MIC, methyl isocyanate unit. And nothing was done about them too, because they would cost money. So all of these came to a head. And on the evening of 2nd December, during routine maintenance operations, and maintenance operations were required again because of the design changes. There were MIC that would solidify on the walls of the pipelines, and that had to be lanced. Lanced in the sense you send a strong water jet and dissolve it. That was the way they did it. But that all that water then somehow, because the tank that should have had positive nitrogen pressure didn't have, and water entered the tank, and MIC and water cause a what's called a exothermic reaction. It generates a lot of heat, and that heat makes the reaction go faster, and the faster it goes, more heat is generated. So it becomes like a closed loop, and like a runaway horse, a runaway reaction starts, and there's no way of stopping it. So when that happened, this was around 11ish in the late evening, late night, in the night, close to midnight, and that's when the workers realized there was nothing they could do. And they ran in the opposite direction of the wind, as everyone should. And within no time, the valve ruptured, and little after midnight, this gas started leaking up from about 100 feet high. The workers were in the emergency squad. They tried doing whatever they could, but none of the safety devices worked. The workers, they tried to put water jets, because water, if there's a large amount of water available, then MIC would react with water and become dimethylurea, which is relatively non-toxic. But the water jets won't reach 100 feet. So the water didn't work. The two other safety systems that were there, one was, if you go close, you can see them still. One was called a vent gas scrubber, VGS, in which you had a caustic soda shower coming from top, and any escaping gas would come from below, and this caustic soda would neutralize the gas, and it would become ineffective. That night there was no caustic soda in this scrubber, yeah. And the last resort, the gas comes out and it moves out onto a flare tower. That too you can see from a distance. And on the flare tower there used to be a pilot flame, as you have in refineries. And any escaping gas would catch fire and again become non-toxic. Break down into non-toxic ingredients. But that night there was no pilot flame, and the flare tower was under repair for the last 3 days. So as I said, none of these safety things worked. The gas that was leaking, it was a very cold night, so the plume went down. The gas plume actually mixed, because it was coming with high velocity. It mixed with the moisture in the air and formed something what's called an aerosol, or a cloud. And these poison clouds, heavier than air, descended down onto the community right opposite the factory and moved with a gentle wind, some 5 to 10 kilometers per hour, southerly wind, that it took them towards the south. And it covered an area of about 40 square kilometers, like an arc. And there was a gust that went behind, so some part of the northeast also got covered. And this came down. At that time there were no brick and cement houses. Most of them were mud houses with thatch roofs. So while people were still asleep, that this gas entered their houses, and they woke up choking and coughing and tears streaming down, because it was an extremely pungent gas. Almost all people who have witnessed this say it is like someone was burning chili peppers right next to our eyes. It was that intense. So, but people did not know what to do. They were not told to run opposite to the direction of the wind as the workers had been. They were not told to keep a wet cloth over their hands and eyes. They were not even told what gases were being produced by the management of the company. So people ran towards the main hospital, which is the Hamidia hospital, and that was in the same direction as the wind was blowing, unfortunately. So as they ran, they inhaled more and more of this gas that was burning. Like I said, it causes extreme heat if it comes into touch with water. So it came in touch with water in the eyes, moisture in the eyes, and burned and cooked like omelette. The vitreous humor, which is a protein in our eyes, that got cooked. So people have white bands here. All the protein that has got cooked because they had to pry their eyes open like this in this intense to be able to walk. So that's why you get rectangular bands that still make it difficult for women to thread needles, even till this day.